Hey, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're tuning in to me today. Um, Welcome to another episode of Empowerment Through Encouragement. And in this particular episode, I'm going to talk about three more automatic negative thoughts that take place especially in the mind of someone that their mind is already hyperactive or even just overactive. And we ruminate these thoughts, but this isn't just specific to ADD or ADHD. I want to emphasize the fact that when we have this extra octane, then what happens? Experience it exacerbated just a little bit more. It's magnified. And three of the ants that I want to talk about today are number one, fortune telling. The other one is mind reading. How many of us do that? And then also thinking with your feelings. And the reason that I say that those of us that have the gift of having a mind that is extra active or even hyperactive, as we're thinking things, our creativity is a little bit different. And so we can imagine, and I want to say that there's a lot of imagination that takes place in the mind. And when we add this and we couple it with an overactive mind, this can sometimes run rampant and take over. So what I want to do is talk about that today and talk about this experience that we all have. Now, here again, once I said, all of us have these automatic negative thoughts. And if you caught the description that I used today, it was that sometimes we can let our mind run wild. And usually it does that as soon as we wake up. So that's why sleep is so important, because it allows our mind to detoxify, to settle, and just get calm again. But as soon as we wake up, how many of you this morning, when you woke up, you thought, man, today's going to be an awesome day. I've got all these things that are just exciting, ready to happen? Or did your thoughts go to, oh man, I have to do that. I didn't finish that yesterday. Oh, I got to see that person. Oh, we got that family reunion coming up, or we're going to be around these people. Life is just difficult. And we start fortune telling, and we start creating a future that hasn't happened, that isn't the outcome that we want. And that's where fortune telling come in. That's where fortune telling ants come in. It's predictive of the worst possible outcome. Now, how many of us have ever done that? Okay, I'm raising my hand as well. You predict the worst outcome that could happen without any real evidence. And that's where we get into trouble. And when you have ADD, you may be going to school and imagine that the experience that you had with a student or with a teacher the day before, and how it's going to just turn out even worse. And you've already created this environment in your mind, and it raises your blood pressure, it raises your cortisol levels, and it puts you into this hyper vigilant response. Now, you don't even have to have ADD for this to happen, but this happens especially our proclivity to go to that measure happens without any real evidence. So we might feel that we're assuming things that will go wrong. That's the fortune telling, and which can lead to anxiety. It can lead to avoidance behaviors. It can lead to procrastination, putting things off, because we've already determined something that is going to happen that hasn't happened. I always say that it's best to leave the future created rather than allow it to create my reality. And so I can create that. So imagine you're giving a presentation and you think, I'm definitely going to mess this up. I'm going to take this test. I've studied really hard, but I know that I'm going to fail. you are going to have a conversation and you just know how bad it's going to go. You already know that you're not going to get the review that you expected, whether it be from a peer, an employer, or a community. And you're predicting the future before it happens in a negative way. So how can you combat this? Well, you can ask yourself, what evidence do I have that this is going to happen? What evidence do I have? And I know there's somebody out there right now that's saying, "Oh, I've had that conversation with that person." You know, that person that found your last nerve that you thought you had already found. Well, they're that person that finds your last nerve again. So how do you do that? You create a different mindset. And it's not always that easy, but it is that easy. We make it more complicated. So we create in our mind that, hey, this could be a different situation. I could respond differently, and I could not fortune tell that they're already going to say something, because when I do that, I'm already presupposing how the outcome is going to be. That's the fortune telling. And I'm already creating that defense mechanism, that defense statement. I know she's not going to like this. I know he's not going to like this. So I'm going to create a response, a defense, because I'm anticipating, I'm fortune telling their reaction. So I'm going to have a counter reaction. And we go in all hyped up. And a lot of times what happens is it didn't turn out quite as bad, or even near on the bad scale that we anticipated. Sometimes we can walk away and go, wow, it wasn't that bad. I was expecting something more. And that's where that fortune telling ant, that automatic negative thought, comes into our mind. How many of you have had a conversation on your way to work by yourself, anticipating meeting up with that person that you're prepared to have that conversation, and you've already had it? So by the time you get there, you're already amped up. Your mind is circulating. You're hyper vigilant. You're looking for everything to go the way that you have presupposed it to go. And then it doesn't turn out that way. And you say to yourself, wow, it wasn't that bad. I don't know what happened to them. They didn't respond the way that I told myself they were going to respond. So consider practicing a different visualization. Imagine the outcome that you desire. Imagine scoring an A on that test. Imagine, I remember when I was just happy to get a C, and I celebrated that. I didn't have to get an A. The grade, the A on that test didn't make my identity. But when I anticipated and I fortune told that I was going to already underperform, guess what happened? I underperformed. So the other ant that I want to talk about is that mind reading. I like to say it this way, that I have enough trouble figuring out what's between my ears. I don't need anybody else trying to figure it out for me. Mind reading. So when you can't figure out what it is you're thinking, how could you possibly know what another person is thinking? So when we start mind reading, we're believing that we know what another person is thinking, even though this hasn't been told to us. And this can lead to misunderstandings and unnecessary stress. Now, we're all guilty of that. Well, maybe not you. Maybe there's somebody out there that has never done any mind reading, and I want to applaud you. Congratulations. I'm going to celebrate you. But I can't be your friend. No, I'm just kidding. The idea behind mind reading is we do more mind reading. We look at somebody and they're already in a contemplation, and we go to this thought. And this happens with especially in young children, high school kids, and young adults, is that we begin to interpret, we mind read hey, they must not like me anymore because they didn't get all excited when I walked into the room, or they turned their back when I was walking down the hall, or we start to mind read what other people, and we contemplate this, and this just swirls in the mind of somebody that is hyper vigilant, hyperactive, or overactive, and then the rest of us, right? So how can we avoid that? If a friend doesn't respond the right way, we start to think they're ignoring me because they're mad at me. How many of us have said that? We've looked at somebody and they didn't give us the look that we expected. Here again, when expectation overrides appreciation, then things get all discombobulated. So when we start to think, okay, well, without considering the possibilities of why they didn't look at you the way they did, or why they didn't comment on something the way that you wanted it to, maybe that person has ruminating thoughts themselves. Generally, that's a big case. And we don't know all of the situations. Somebody didn't respond to an email or didn't respond to a message, and we start mind reading, they don't like me anymore. I'm not their friend. And we find this especially on social media. We're looking for those likes. We're looking for the hearts. We're looking for the emojis, and we're not getting them. And we go, they don't like me anymore. They're mad at me. I must have done something. And we start ruminating these thoughts in our mind. Now, so the strategy to combat that is, I want to encourage you to focus on communication by asking rather than making assumptions. Asking questions rather than making assumptions. Ask the question, what else could it be? What could I have done? And if there's nothing that I could have done that created that, why should I think that? Why would I think that they're mad at me when I have no reason to believe that there's a reason to be mad at me? Is this statement true? You might say, I feel like you might be upset. Is that true? Have I done something that has upset you? And when we take ownership of it, rather than, I'm sorry you feel that way, I'm sorry you feel upset, it's asking the question, have I done something that's upset you? And then we don't have to mind read anymore. We can get it all out. And once we understand what's inside the package, it really makes things kind of go away. And it relieves our mind and allows the stress levels to drop, the cortisol levels to drop. And you can feel that weight falling off your shoulders, just that clarification. Now, the other ant that I want to talk about is thinking with your feelings. And this involves believing that negative feelings are accurate. They're an accurate reflection of reality without questioning them. For example, emotions, thinking with your feelings. I feel like she's upset, or I feel like it's just going to be a bad day. I feel like everything that I do just falls apart. Have you ever had one of those weeks where it seemed like one situation led to another, and it wasn't in the productive or positive way, and we start to think that it's all me? We start to think that I'm not worth it, or I'm not worthy. And we start thinking by wearing those feelings on our shoulder, and our shoulders start to shrug, our head starts to tilt down, and things didn't go in a manner or in a respect that we expected. Here again, that expectation over appreciation. We start thinking that, hey, they didn't look at me that way, so there must be something wrong. And we start feeling this way. Something's something's definitely bad going to happen. That's thinking with our feelings. And now we get into this hyper awareness where our reticular activating system, that part in the back of the brain, now starts to look for those things. And one of the kind of crude things that I've used before and I'll use today, and it was, Mom always said, if you look for a booger, you will find one if you keep looking. Now, we know that little kids explore these two little orifices. And if you look for something, you're going to find it. And this is what our reticular activating system does. And this is where we start to think with our feelings that maybe somebody doesn't like us. Maybe we're not on the in crowd. And we start feeling this way. Now we start responding this way. Now our thinking triggers and it goes into that mode of thinking with our feelings. And it's never very productive. So how do you combat this? I want to encourage you to go into a mindfulness and a cognitive restructuring. Go into a mindful state where you close your eyes, you put your hands on your chest, and you take a deep breath in through your nose, and you hold it for 5 seconds, and then you release it slowly out of your mouth for 5 seconds. And do that 3 or 4 times and watch what it does. It brings your mind to a present state. Maybe you've heard this before, that we are in an epidemic of presenteeism. And the presenteeism is that we can be in the same environment. We can be in the company of someone else and be totally disconnected and elsewhere. That's presenteeism. And this is what happens with ourselves. So when we take this and we get mindful about becoming present with ourselves and just closing our eyes and disconnecting just for a moment. And one of the things that we can disconnect from is this thing right here. Get present in the moment and restructure your thoughts. Just 1 or 2 thoughts. And not think with our feelings, and ask themselves, are these feelings based on facts? Is it a fact? Is it true? Is it 100% true? Who would I be without this statement? What does it make me feel like if I didn't have that statement, if I didn't have that feeling? We can separate emotion from reality, because I want to ask, is your reality creating your personality, or is your personality creating your reality? And you'll find the answer in that is if you're thinking with your feelings, if you're mind reading, if you're fortune telling. So taking these little tips, and you could go back and rewatch this. And what I want to say is that if you're watching this, I want to encourage you to know that I'm going to check the comments over here. Okay. No comments. What I want to do is encourage you to understand that you're not defective, that you're not alone, that most people are having these thoughts. Most people are having these experiences, and fortune telling, mind reading, and thinking with your feelings, it is a human characteristic because it is something that we have learned. We have learned to get a response. And when you don't understand what's going on up here already, and you're given something to suppress it or something to control it, then we're reliant on that outside experience. And then we look at our environment around us, and it can be a tendency to take place. So I want to encourage you today. I will cover a couple more ants next week. And I want to encourage you today to, number one, test the waters, test these automatic negative thoughts, and ask, is this true? Or am I making it up? I mean, imagination is great when it's worked in our favor. But when your imagination runs wild and the first thing you wake up in the morning with these negative thoughts, automatic negative thoughts, because we don't have to think about them too much, they just pop up. Once we know that they're aware, then we can take out our own can of Raid and extinguish the ants, the automatic negative thoughts. So thank you for joining me today. And what I want to do is I want to ask you if you've enjoyed this, if you've liked this, and understanding that, especially with ADD, our impulsivity to respond is a little bit different than those that do not have this experience. And sometimes it's difficult to organize your thoughts. Now, you don't even have to have ADD to have those moments where you just go, I just want this tornado to stop. And you jump from one difficulty to another difficulty to another difficulty, and they create these negative thoughts. I want to say, take some mindfulness time to yourself, just a few moments, get present, do some breath work, and watch what it does. Join me next week. And if you like this, please like, comment, share this with those that you know. And I know that there are thousands upon thousands and thousands of people that this information can make a difference. It's the simple steps that get us through the journey. It is the small hinges that move big doors. So take these 3 ants and extinguish them. Join me next week, and I look forward to seeing you on our next episode. Have an outstanding